What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. Today, we're going to be going through my top 36 rankings at the running back position as we approach week 4 of the fantasy football season. If you haven't watched it already, we already did the wide receiver version of this episode. It came out on the channel earlier today, but right now we're going to be going through those running backs. So let's not waste any more time. Let's hop right into today's video and let's start talking about these running backs. So as you can see, I got the tier maker pulled up on the screen as we speak. I got 7 tiers to get through all 36 running backs in today's video. We are going to be starting it off in tier 1. And in tier 1, we are going to be calling that the elite running back ones. Coming in as my 1 overall, that is where I'm going to put Saquon Barkley of the Philadelphia Eagles. He gets to play on the road at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And this week, Barkley, he rushed 17 times for 147 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he brought in all 4 targets for 9 yards in the Eagles' 15-12 win over the Saints on Sunday. Saquon, he continues to dominate for fantasy football purposes, and he could be leaned on more in this game against Tampa Bay if Devontae Smith and if A.J. Brown both miss this game. Now, coming in at my running back 2, this is where I'm going to have Breece Hall of the New York Jets. He plays against the Denver Broncos here this week. Now, Hall, he rushed 16 times for 54 yards and a touchdown, and he secured 4 of 5 targets for 29 yards in the Jets' 24-3 win over the Patriots on Thursday night. Hall has seen a very consistent floor over the last few weeks, even with Braylon Allen getting involved, and he should have more of the same here in week 4 against Denver. Now, coming in as my running back 3, here's where I'm going to put Bijan Robinson of the Atlanta Falcons. He plays against the New Orleans Saints, and he had a very solid day for us here again this week as well. That being said, you look at Bijan Robinson, we just haven't had the huge blow-up game from Bijan yet. It does feel like that could be coming very, very soon, so I do think we can still operate with Bijan as a set-it-and-forget-it RB1 moving forward. Now, let's move on to my tier 2. My tier 2 is going to be those high-end running back ones. Coming in as my running back 4 on the week, I'm going to have Derrick Henry of the Baltimore Ravens. He gets to play against the Buffalo Bills this week, and Henry, he rushed the ball 25 times for 151 yards and 2 touchdowns in Sunday's 28-25 win over the Cowboys. He added 1 catch on 1 target for 23 yards, and he's never going to be used heavily in the receiving game, but this week's matchup versus Buffalo should be one of the more exciting games of the weekend, and Buffalo currently ranks 24th against opposing running backs. Now, coming in as my running back 5, I'm going to put Jordan Mason of the San Francisco 49ers. He gets to play a game against the New England Patriots, and Mason, he rushed 19 times for 77 yards and caught both of his targets for 11 yards in Sunday's 27-24 loss to the Rams. Now, Mason, he didn't find the end zone in Sunday's game, so it didn't feel like he had a really big day from him, but Mason, he's still going to continue to be the running back 1 for fantasy football teams as long as CMC is out. Now, moving on to my running back 6, this is where I'm going to put Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions. He gets to play against the Seattle Seahawks this week, and Gibbs, he rushed 16 times for 83 yards and added a 20-yard receiving touchdown in Sunday's 20-13 win over the Cardinals. This week's matchup against the Seahawks, it's going to be tougher, but Gibbs, he gets enough work in the receiving game and in the rushing game that I feel like he always has a safe floor, so that's why he's coming in as my running back 6. Moving on to my running back 7, I'm going to put James Conner here. He gets to play against the Washington Commanders, and Conner rushed 9 times for 17 yards and secured his only target for 8 yards in the Cardinals' 20-13 loss to the Lions on Sunday. It was a rough day overall for James Conner, but this week against the Commanders should be a great opportunity to bounce back, and Washington currently ranks 19th against the running back position. Now, moving on to my running back 8, this is where I'm going to put Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts. Taylor, he carried the ball 23 times for 119 yards and 2 touchdowns in Sunday's 21-16 win over the Bears. He also caught 1 of 2 targets for 25 yards in this matchup as well. Taylor, he looks to be heating up for fantasy football purposes, and this offense may choose to start leaning on the run a little bit more due to the inefficiencies of the passing games here in Indianapolis. Now, moving on to my running back 9, this is where I'm going to put Kyren Williams of the Los Angeles Rams. He plays at the Chicago Bears here this week, and Williams, he rushed 24 times for 89 yards and 2 touchdowns, while he also added 27 yards and a 3rd touchdown on 2 receptions in Sunday's 27-24 win over the San Francisco 49ers. Feels very much like the Los Angeles Rams are going to be leaning heavily on Kyren Williams in the absence of their 2-star receivers. Chicago hasn't really been a tough matchup for running backs despite actually being a pretty good defense this year, so Kyren should still have top 10 upside this week. Now, moving on to my tier 3. Tier 3 is what we're going to call low-end running back ones. Coming in as my running back 10, I have James Cook of the Buffalo Bills. He plays against the Baltimore Ravens on the road. Cook, he rushed 11 times for 39 yards and a touchdown while catching 4 of 5 targets for 48 yards in Monday's 47-10 win over the Jaguars. Josh Allen's Superman mode and James Cook, it seems to be the consistent game plan for Buffalo this year, and Cook, he should still have some RB1 appeal, even against a very tough Baltimore Ravens defense. Now, coming in as my running back 11, here's where I'm going to put Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints. He plays on the road at the Atlanta Falcons, and Kamara, he logged 26 rushes for 87 yards, and he gathered in all 3 targets for 40 yards during Sunday's 15-12 loss to the Eagles. The Saints, they lost a key piece to the offensive line in this one, and it's going to affect Alvin Kamara moving forward, but he still is game script proof and should have plenty of volume to rely on. Moving on to my running back 12, this is where I'm going to put Achane, and he is the last player in this tier. He plays against the Tennessee Titans here this week. Achane, he rushed 11 times for 30 yards, and he secured 3 of 5 targets for 28 yards in the Dolphins' 24-3 loss to the Seahawks on Sunday. This offense, it's looked much worse under Skylar Thompson, and that was expected, but Achane, he really didn't do much on the ground here in this one either, so we should temper the expectations with pretty much all Miami Dolphins options here moving forward. Now, moving on to my tier 4. Tier 4 is what we're going to call safe running back 2s. Right here is where I have Aaron Jones coming in as my running back 13. He gets a revenge game here against the Green Bay Packers on the road. Jones, he carried the ball 19 times for 102 yards, and he caught 5 of 6 targets for 46 yards and a touchdown in Sunday's 34-7 win over the Texans. He is averaging a whopping 5.4 yards per carry, though, through his first 3 games as a Viking, and he feels like a player we need to be moving up our weekly rankings moving forward, especially this week as he seeks revenge versus the Packers. Now, moving on to my running back 14, here's where I'm going to put Brian Robinson Jr. of the Washington Commanders. He plays on the road at the Arizona Cardinals. Robinson, he rushed 16 times for 33 yards and a touchdown, and he brought in his only target for 4 yards in the Commanders' 38-33 win over the Bengals on Monday night. Now, B-Rob, he has very quietly been a RB1 twice this year, an RB2 once. Feels like a player that's flying under the radar and somebody we can confidently start here in week 4 against the Arizona Cardinals. Now, moving on to my running back 15, here's where I'm going to put Josh Jacobs of the Green Bay Packers. He plays against the Minnesota Vikings, and Jacobs, he rushed the ball 14 times for 43 yards in Sunday's 30-14 win over the Titans. He added 1 reception on 1 target for 5 yards, and this week's matchup against Minnesota should be much tougher than what he saw last week. That being said, Minnesota, they're currently ranking 6th best against the running back position. But the good news for Jacobs is he might have Jordan Love back in the lineup, which should really help with some of the efficiencies of this offense. Moving on to my running back 16, here's where I'm going to put Travis Etienne Jr. This is going to be a game against the Houston Texans on the road, and Etienne, he rushed 11 times for 68 yards, and he brought in 4 of 6 targets for 17 yards in the Jaguars' 47-10 loss to the Bills on Monday night. This game script got out of hand very fast, so it's not a game that I'm going to put too much stock into. However, the night was still decent for Travis Etienne considering the circumstances. I think he should have a similar type of week here in week 4 against the Houston Texans. Now, moving on to my running back 17, I'm going to put David Montgomery of the Detroit Lions. He plays against the Seattle Seahawks. Monty, he rushed 23 times for 105 yards and a touchdown while catching all 3 of his targets for 17 yards in Sunday's 20-13 win over the Cardinals. Seattle's defense is tough, but Monty, he continues to find the end zone, and he continues to be the first option on the goal line here for the Lions. He is a player who is likely always going to be a strong running back 2 option simply because of the touchdown upside alone in this offense. Now, coming in as my running back 18, this is where I'm going to put Tony Pollard of the Tennessee Titans. He plays on the road at the Miami Dolphins, and Pollard, he rushed the ball 6 times for 14 yards in Sunday's 30-14 loss to the Packers. He added 3 receptions on 4 targets for 15 yards, and Pollard, he operated as Tennessee's lead back by accounting for 9 of the team's running back touches when they only had 15 of them overall. This also included 6 of the 8 rushing attempts that they had as a team. He's going to be looking to get more opportunities here in week 4 against an iffy Miami defense that currently ranks 29th against the running back position. Now, moving on to my running back 19, this is where I'm going to have Ramondre Stevenson, and he's the last player in this tier. Now, he plays on the road at the San Francisco 49ers, and last week he rushed 6 times for 23 yards and lost a fumble in the Patriots' 24-3 loss to the Jets on Thursday night. Ramondre, he got banged up in this game, but I haven't heard anything about him potentially missing this week's game. That being said, this is a player who can very easily climb my ranks as more injury news comes out, so make sure that you stay tuned to this channel because he is probably a player that I'm going to be keeping an eye on throughout the rest of the week. Now, moving on to my tier 5. Tier 5 is what we're going to call fringe running back 2s, coming in at 20. This is where I have Devin Singletary. He gets to play against the Dallas Cowboys this week, and Singletary, he rushed 16 times for 65 yards and a touchdown. He caught all 4 of his targets for 43 yards, and he lost a fumble in Sunday's 21-15 win over the Browns. Dallas has been absolutely bleeding points to the running back position over the last few weeks, and we've done very well targeting running backs who play against Dallas. I think we can rely on Singletary to be the next running back to feast against this Cowboys defense, and he comes in this week as my running back 20. Now, moving on to my running back 21, this is where I'm going to put Zach Moss of the Cincinnati Bengals. He gets to play on the road at the Carolina Panthers, and he rushed 12 times for 58 yards and a touchdown while catching 5 passes on 6 targets for 39 yards in Monday's 38-33 loss to the Washington Commanders. Moss, he's put together the best game of his season on a season high of 17 combined touches. I expect him to continue to add to that performance here in week 4 against a very soft Carolina defense. Coming in as running back 22, this is where I'm going to put Najee Harris of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He gets to play on the road at the Indianapolis Colts, and Harris, he rushed 18 times for 70 yards, and he caught all 5 of his targets for 16 yards in Sunday's 20-10 win over the Chargers. He was spotted in a sling in the locker room on Monday, but it sounds like he shouldn't miss any time. If so, he likely handles another very heavy workload here in Indianapolis, especially if Jaylen Warren misses time, which it sounds like he might be doing that here in this week's game. Now, coming in as my running back 23, this is where I'm going to put Chuba Hubbard of the Carolina Panthers. He gets to play against the Cincinnati Bengals this week, and Hubbard, he rushed the ball 21 times for 114 yards in Sunday's 36-22 upset over the Las Vegas Raiders. He added 5 receptions on 5 targets for 55 yards and a touchdown. Only 6 of his 21 carries went for fewer than 4 yards, and he also had a long reception of 20 yards. Chuba, he looks to be one of the main beneficiaries of the QB change in Carolina, and a guy we can rely on as a fringe running back 2 here in week 4. Now, moving on to my running back 24 overall, that's where I'm going to have J.K. Dobbins of the Los Angeles Chargers. He gets a matchup here against the Kansas City Chiefs, and Dobbins, he carried the ball 15 times for 44 yards, and he also caught 3 of his targets for 10 yards in the 20-10 loss to the Steelers on Sunday. Dobbins, he came back down to earth in week 3 against what we said was going to be a much tougher test defensively than he has seen so far this year. It didn't help that he was also missing the starting quarterback of the offense later in the game, and he could be without him again here in week 4 against a very tough Kansas City defense. So I think we should temper the expectations with Dobbins once again as we enter week 4 of the season. Now, coming in as my running back 25, this is where I'm going to put Jerome Ford of the Cleveland Browns. He gets to play on the road at the Las Vegas Raiders. And Ford, he rushed 10 times for 37 yards, and he caught 3 of 4 targets for 33 yards in Sunday's 21-15 loss to the Giants. We were worried a little bit about the emergence of D'Onta Foreman last week, but he was pretty much non-existent here this week. I'd be very comfortable firing Ford up as a fringe running back 2 here in my rosters week 4. Now, moving on to my running back 26, I am going to put Zach Charbonnet of the Seattle Seahawks. He gets to play on the road at the Detroit Lions. Charbonnet, he rushed the ball 18 times for 91 yards and 2 touchdowns in Sunday's 24-3 win over the Dolphins. He added 3 receptions on 4 targets for 16 yards as a receiver. And Walker, he hasn't officially been ruled out, so I am tempering the expectations for both of these guys until we get some more news later in the week. But if Walker is out, Sharp is an RB2 play this week, even if it's against the #1 ranked Lions rushing defense. And now the last player here in my tier 5, I am going to have Rachaad White coming in as running back 27. He gets to play against the Philadelphia Eagles. White, he rushed 6 times for 17 yards, and he brought in 5 of 6 targets for 18 yards in the Buccaneers' 26-7 loss to the Broncos on Sunday. With under 2.9 yards per carry, Todd Bowles has already said Bucky Irving is earning some more work, and I think if he does get some more work, which is the expectation, it is going to cap White's upside moving forward. Now, moving on to my tier 6. Tier 6 we're going to call the low upside running back 3s. Coming in as my running back 28, I do have Carson Steele of the Kansas City Chiefs. He gets to play against the Los Angeles Chargers on the road. Now, Steele, he rushed 17 times for 72 yards while catching 1 of 2 targets for 2 yards in Sunday's 22-17 win over the Falcons. Steele, he filled in nicely for Pacheco, and he was pretty good on the ground. I worry that this gets a little bit messier if Hunt gets activated, which he did get activated, so still he should continue to operate as the early down power back in this offense regardless, but it could get a little bit messier with Kareem Hunt here active this week. Now, moving on to my running back 29, this is where I'm going to put Cam Akers of the Houston Texans. He gets to play against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Akers, he carried the ball 9 times for 21 yards, and he caught 1 of 3 targets for an 8-yard touchdown in Sunday's 34-7 loss to the Vikings. This week's matchup against Jacksonville, it should be easier than last week's, and it should make Akers an RB3 option for teams that need help due to running back injuries. Now, coming in as my running back 30, here's where I have DeAndre Swift of the Chicago Bears. He gets to play against the Los Angeles Rams, and Swift, he carried the ball 13 times for 20 yards, and he caught 2 of 4 targets for 22 yards in Sunday's 21-16 loss to the Colts. With just 1.7 yards per carry, Swift has been very underwhelming. Getting scary for Swift. He's a player that I just don't have much confidence in starting anymore. Last week was supposed to be an easy matchup for him, and this week is supposed to be the same, but Roschon, he saw some work last week, and he looked better than Swift did with the opportunities that he got. Now, coming in as my running back 31, here's where I have Javonte Williams of the Denver Broncos. He gets to play on the road at the New York Jets. Williams, he rushed 5 times for 12 yards, and he secured all 4 targets for 29 yards in the Broncos' 26-7 win over the Buccaneers on Sunday. Javonte, he has a tough matchup this week against the Jets, as I mentioned, and Javonte, he's splitting work in this backfield, which is severely capping his upside, but you can still start him in a pinch if you need him. And the last player in this tier, that is going to be Austin Eckler, coming in as my running back 32. He gets to play on the road at Arizona if he plays. Eckler, he tallied 57 total yards and 1 touchdown before sustaining a concussion in Monday's game versus the Bengals. If he can go later this week, I would probably move him up my rankings a little bit, but this is a player who definitely needs to be keeping an eye on throughout the week because there's a chance he he just doesn't play here at all in week 4. Now going on to the last and final tier, tier 7, we're going to call these flex plays, flex guys. Coming in at 33, that is Braylon Allen. He gets to play against the Denver Broncos, and Allen, he rushed 11 times for 55 yards, and he caught all 3 of his targets for 13 yards in Thursday's 24-3 win over the Patriots. Braylon, he continues to look like one of the best backup running backs in the NFL, and he looks like a true league winner if anything were to ever happen to Breece Hall. That being said, this week's matchup against Denver should give Allen some flex appeal. Now coming in as my running back 34, we already said he was going to get more touches. Bucky Irving of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he plays against the Philly Eagles. Irving, he rushed 9 times for 70 yards, and he brought in all 3 targets for 14 yards in the Buccaneers' 26-7 loss to the Broncos on Sunday. Like I said, White, he doesn't look good. Sounds like Irving's going to get some more opportunities, and if he does, he's looked decent with the limited opportunities that he's had so far, and Philly isn't necessarily going to be the easiest of matchups for running backs, but he should still have some flex appeal for us here in week 4. Moving on to running back 35, I got Alexander Mattison of the Las Vegas Raiders. He plays against the Cleveland Browns. He rushed 3 times for 7 yards and a touchdown in Sunday's 36-22 loss to the Panthers. He also caught all 3 of his targets for 37 yards as well. Madison, he's continuing to see the most valuable touches for fantasy football purposes in Las Vegas, and he should be a flex play this week if you need him. And last but not least, coming in as running back 36, this is where I'm going to put Tyjae Spears. He gets to play on the road at the Miami Dolphins. That said, Spears, he rushed the ball 2 times for 7 yards in Sunday's 30-14 loss to the Packers. He added 4 receptions on 4 targets for 54 yards. In this week's matchup against Miami, it should be pretty easy for the most part, assuming that Skylar Thompson plays the way that he did last week. And if that is the case, maybe the Titans, they get to an early lead and Tyjae Spears sees some more work here in the second half. So there you have it. That's my top 36 running backs as we head into week 4 of the fantasy football season. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, go ahead and hit that like button for me. It is the best free way to show this channel some support. Also, make sure you guys are subscribed. That way you never miss any future content. And last but not least, go join that Discord. That Discord is linked in the description. Free to join, so there is no risk in doing that. But with all of that being said, I have nothing else for you guys today. I will see you on our next episode. Until then, peace out.